Okay, cool. Well, some of you trudged through the technical difficulty. Um, Welcome to Storyboarding, Introduction to Storyboarding. I'll be your guide, Peter, or as my handle is Finalli. I just want to make sure everyone's downloaded if you're going to follow along, you've downloaded the storyboard template from the miscellaneous folder, graciously put on by BP. Yes? All right, cool. Um, so I guess I should introduce a little bit of what storyboards are, at least the way I use them. It's a bit different than comic books with respects to the final outcome. Storyboards are just the process drawings. They're like, whereas a treatment is a plan for the script, a storyboard is a visual plan for the film. So here's our storyboard template. Um, this is a generic one I just sort of put together real quick in Sketch Club. But for all intents and purposes, this works just fine. And I've used this template minus the smaller boxes below the storyboard panels as for production, so on set. Excuse me, I should have asked before we get started. Does any does anyone have any questions before we sort of jump right into this? So this is Moonchild's answer, or answer to Moonchild's question. Um, we do use storyboards in animation extensively. In fact, just from a sheer mechanics standpoint, we have to storyboard it out before we draw the final scenes. But we also use storyboards in live action, just so that we can plan out camera staging and actors blocking, especially with VFX. Once you sort of marry the two, the visual effects component and live action, storyboards become crucial. Am I famous? Um, I guess that depends. If you see me without my shirt off, or with my shirt off on um, cops, then yes, I'm famous. Um, do I create storyboards for a living? Yes. Or I'm involved heavily in the pre-production. Um, storyboards is a big component of one of my responsibilities at the studio. But I have a few other sort of hats that I have to wear, Wendy. Thank you. I don't know if I'm a master yet. Let me show you some of the storyboards I've created in Sketch Club already. I'll load that file up. It's for an upcoming or a segment of an upcoming TV show. I blocked it out, so it hasn't aired yet. So I don't want to get into any trouble. I'll let you see sort of what the storyboard looks like, and then I can explain a couple of things within it, and then we can sort of jump in and start drawing and boarding. Is that cool? Um, you may have seen my story. You probably won't see my storyboards on TV, just because the storyboards are a process of production. So generally, we board them out. But you may have seen I've storyboarded tons and tons of commercials, some animations, etc. So you may have seen the final product, but unfortunately, the storyboards is sort of the unsung hero behind the production, Moonchild. Before I get any further, too, I'd like to thank PK for the wonderful transcribing of what I'm saying. Awesome, you're great. So this is page one. Um, right at the sorry, I'll explain a couple of things before I get started. One of these boxes, let me outline it, is called a panel. Everything happens within the panel. It's probably one of the major distinctions between storyboards and comic books. You'll see that I actually draw outside the panels. That's just so I get forms and shapes and what it'll look like. But for my purposes, nothing can exist outside the panel. So the graphic appeal of using a page doesn't really come into play with storyboards. Make sense? No, Moonchild, you don't have to go into so much detail when doing storyboards. Um, it depends on the crew that you're working with. In animation, it tends to be much simpler. With live action, because they're used to seeing, or at least the DOP, the director of photography, is used to seeing a more finished result. They tend to want to see more info. So we have a panel. The area under the area underneath the panel is a call out to the scene or panel number. So a scene is from one camera cut to the other. So as long as the camera is rolling until it cuts, going into a different scene, it is one or into a different action or different camera setup. It's called a scene. You'll also notice at the top, I've actually connected the two panels. This is what's called a camera move. In this case, it's a horizontal pan from camera left to camera right. So we're actually moving the camera on a track across, and just in this case, it's dancers performing. So this is called a camera move. In this case, it's a pan. Right at the top here is our project name or production followed by the date, followed by the page number. I guess the most important part I'd want you to take away with from this sort of explanation is that always number your scenes and your panels, because when it goes to production, there could be hundreds and hundreds of panels and scenes, and when you're if it goes in this case live action, when you're shooting, this sort of organization really makes sure you got all your sort of ducks in a row. You'll also see, um, you'll also see. Sorry, this panel and this panel are still one scene. So in this case, there's an alien coming that causes everything to float. So sometimes a panel to another panel will just indicate or describe visually how that action sort of continues on. Like nodding in agreement or nodding off, Wendy? All right, right on. Okay, so in this, oops, let me just select the layer. Incidentally, thank you, BP, for making it unable to draw on the layer that is not selected. So this panel here, I don't know why it didn't indicate it on my final on the final shoot date. It was there, but this is a horizontal pan revealing the talent. Talent is the actor inside, as he's supposed to be an alien. As we sort of move up from the ship opening up to all its little compartments and then revealing the alien inside. Make sense? Oh, that's funny. He does sort of look like Will Smith, or the actor does sort of look like Will Smith, but a younger version and bald, fully bald. Okay, So before we get into sort of storyboarding out a story, it's good if we all sort of speak the same language. And in this case, it's visual language and storyboarding language. So I'm going to sort of draw a bit and give you some um, examples of the different options you have within storyboarding. Okay, I'm back. Everyone's still here? Just so I explain what I'm doing here, I've put the storyboarding panel, sorry, the template up on my most upmost top layer. Does that show up? Okay, wicked. And then I've set it to multiply. Yeah, you can totally sketch along. If you have to keep up though. The only difference here I want to sort of draw attention is this panel here is is actually a split for action notes and dialogue. I generally combine the two um, for my purposes, or I leave it out completely. It usually makes sense what I'm drawing. So I'm going to actually create sort of storyboards or beat boards. Before actual storyboarding begins, we create beat boards. These are a series of single drawings that represent a scene of the movie or animation or commercial. Um, Now, types of shots. I'll start from the furthest away, meaning the camera position as far away as you can be from the subject or what you're showing off, to closer in. So our first is called an extreme long shot. I didn't want to draw on that layer, sorry. Sorry, missing the questions. Will you draw on a lower layer? Yes. And then I'll do this. Oh, okay. This is the layer below my line layer. So I'll do all my line work on one layer, and then I'll put a second, or I'll have another layer underneath it for values. In this case, using the vector, which is by far one of the best tools in any program, let alone Sketch Club. Um, um, a little bit of both. Sorry, let me Schwabi. Um, I am creating. I don't have a complete map of what I'm going to draw out, but I'm sort of playing off a story before Hansel and Gretel. So maybe the kid Siegfried or something who came before Hansel and Gretel to the house. You mean SK Vector is very awesome, right? I mean SK Vector is totally awesome, Wendy. So this is a long shot. A long shot is also known as an establish. Excuse me. Is also known as an establishing shot, and it's usually used to introduce a new scene or a character's relationship to the environment. So when you want to set up a scene, generally you want to do it in an extreme long shot. Yeah, you got it right, PK. That's it. Right after the long shot, or excuse me, an extreme long shot is called a long shot. So this is also known as a full body shot, and it usually shows a character with some space above or below them. Okay, that's a whole bunch of questions. Let me start at the top. Is it weird that I'm totally falling in terms of shot? Yeah, it's totally weird. It's bizarre. No, just joking. Absolutely. Once you see it, our mind sort of puts these pictures together, anyways. Moonchild. Next question: are these pre-storyboards? Um, for animation, this will do, but the storyboard process is sort of a organic process, meaning that you do a whole bunch of drawings and you sort of see what works. Um, I just cut that off a bit because I wanted to explain it. I guess the life of a storyboard artist is a bit masochistic in that you do a whole bunch of drawings that you'll like, but if they don't work for the story, you have to throw them away, regardless of how well they're drawn. So I think it was I think it was either Oscar Wilde or Tommy Lasorda who said you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater sometimes. And in storyboards, um, that's definitely true. Definitely true. Now this makes sense for um, poorly drawn storyboards. Like there's types of gotchas and structural problems that takes a viewer out of the story, but there's also drawings that are too clever or too well drawn that it immediately says, "Hey, aren't I a clever drawing?" And it does the same thing. It pulls you out of the story. So it's sometimes just as bad to draw a storyboard too well relative to the other storyboard panels. No bunny art. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. Not all storyboards have to be monochromatic, but we're just looking at story structure here, and color. Um, Color's such a complex um, tool or device that it just layers in an additional balls in the juggling act of just telling the story. So for all intents and purposes, you can if you can tell the storyboard or if you can tell the story through monochromatic drawings, then it'll work in color as well. And how many storyboard panels are there in a Pixar film? Well, um, probably somewhere in the ballpark of thousands, maybe even tens of thousands. All right. So, first question: are frames the same as panels? No, frames are individual. they're actually either 1/24th of a animation. So for every scene that you're watching of animation, so every movie, every second, excuse me, is one. Ugh, let me stop. Let me explain that again. I'm trained in traditional animation, meaning hand drawn animation. So you can either do that in 12s or 24s. So that's 12 frames per second or 24 frames per second. So every frame, excuse me, every second of animation has at least 12 and as many as 24 frames of animation. So let me explain a little bit of the process. So if this was an animated story, we're doing the story of Siegfried, the boy before Hansel and Gretel. We would have the story sketches. So these would be like a children's book illustration. Then we would have the storyboard panels, which is similar to what I'm creating here, and that would flow and explain the story a little bit more thoroughly. After that, we would take my storyboard panels and we would put them into a program that would be able to handle them sequentially and make a movie, which we called an animatic. It's called an animatic. Animatic. Also previously known as a Leica reel. So the animatic is the storyboards cut to timing, usually with audio. So someone will say their dialogue lines like, "Come here, little boy," or something. That's the best elderly witch I can do. Um, yes, that's exactly what I am, an animaniac. So we take the animatic and we sit with, usually the directors will sit down, as well as the head of the departments, and we'll watch the animatic and see if it makes sense, if everything's working, if there's anything jarring or feels like it's taken out of the story. Now let's pretend I'm awesome and all my storyboards totally work in the animatic, and they're like, great, this rocks, we don't have to change a thing. Then those scenes are or those the animatic is divided into scenes, and those scenes are handed to animators. Now the animatics involved into something called a work reel. So what it is, and a work reel is dynamic, meaning every time a scene is completed by an animator, so an animator will get a scene, let's say the scene is 5 seconds long. They'll animate a scene for 5 seconds, and then that scene will be put into the animatic with the rest of the storyboard panels. Yep, you got it, Casey. That's exactly what an animatic is. Um, Once those scenes, so this will become like a Frankenstein, where some scenes will be fully animated, other scenes will still be storyboards, and some scenes will, have complete lighting and look finished. And then they'll continually be plugged away, and things will be pulled out and trimmed and expanded until you get what would be the final movie. Now, as I described it, you can sort of see where there's a lot of moving parts. And that's why storyboard is so valuable. So to not waste money and people's times, because we're talking about usually quite a crew, you can sort of flush out your entire story in a storyboard and then what it turns into, which is an animatic. Um, does this boy get out in an oven and eaten? Is he eaten? Yeah, at the end of the story, he has to be eaten because the witch is still alive, right? But I figure in this story, which is complete, up in the air, that she probably has an evil pet like a snake that this boy gets rid of or, kills so that the story of Hansel and Gretel can, take place. Um, it's not like an assembly line though, James, because we have things called, or animation studios have things called dailies, which after a scene is completed, all the animators are called into a small theater or in front of a computer screen, and they do what's called sweatboxing. Sweatboxing to death. That's funny. A sweatbox is another humbling experience where you sit amongst your peers and your supervisor, your animation supervisor, and sometimes the director, and then they'll watch your scene, which could be like 5, 10 seconds long, play over and over and over again on repeat, and everyone, the supervisor will say, "Okay, what don't we like about this scene, or what's not working?" I don't think they have sweat boxes at the Skywalker Ranch after his divorce from his wife, Hillbilly. Storyboard sessions have something similar to a sweat box, and it's called the pitch. Is anyone familiar with the pitch process? Flood of baseball references come in. Yeah, you got it, Schwabi. That's exactly. You sell the scene. So you put up all the storyboard panels up on a wall, and then you go through them and explain what's happening from scene to scene and play out the story and the gags and how they would play. And the rest of the storyboard artists and supervisors will say, "Yeah, yeah, that's working for me," or "Oh, that totally missed the mark. Let's ditch it." And then you rearrange your storyboard panels. So there's been a transition in the animation world, or at least specifically with Pixar, where they've gotten rid of the pitch process. Not entirely, but it's what they have is something called a pitch doctor. So what a pitch doctor does is while you're drawing your scenes, it immediately updates them into the animatic, and then that's presented to the rest of the story artist and the director. Can you hear me now? Sorry, just a crash. So they have something called a pitch doctor. See, the unfortunate byproduct of pitching is that depending on the charisma of the pitcher, you'll like the story a little bit more or a little bit less. And that's an unfair bias because it's not like they're going to be teach or pitching their story to, the millions and millions of audiences that will be watching the movie. So to remain impartial, they've sort of tried to implement this arbitrary way of telling the story. No, the story's still pitched. It's just not the individual artist who's pitching it anymore. So it's done through Pitch Doctor. That's funny, bunny. Um, is communication is vital. Visual communication is vital. So what's the motto? It's confusion and boredom are the enemy of good storyboarding. Uh, yes, true for art as well. Um, but there are some movements in I guess fine art where the audience is allowed to interpret the message or what it means to them. And I think in animation, you have to have a clear understanding of what you want to communicate for it to have an impact to come across. Um, I'm gonna continue drawing. Sorry, Lego House. I don't know. Is it a question? Like, okay. You know what, Casey? That seems a bit harsh. I don't think. I think that's a bit heavy-handed. Because like is subjective, right? If they don't understand your story, then it's something else. PK, are you with me? All right, rock and roll. So, extreme long shot, medium shot, and a medium shot is it usually shows the characters from the knee or waist up or down. Sorry, I wasn't watching the chatter. Did I miss anything? All right, cool, cool, cool. This is a close-up shot, so sometimes called a head and shoulders shot, and it usually shows the characters from the shoulders up. So generally used to deliver dialogue, but it can also be used to show an action like pushing a button or grabbing a cane or something. So I guess sort of anecdotal. The school I went to had two major courses that it was known for: illustration and animation. So illustration is really about creating your own identity as an artist and having that surface, and animation is about a more collaborative form of art to get the story or the idea across. And I guess it takes away some of the subjectivity, song feather, in that if the idea gets across or it does not. Also, animation is mechanics. So there's some acting and performance. Obviously, it's important, but you can. There's a mechanics that sort of describe how an object moves rather than how it looks. I don't know who said it, but yeah, that's exactly right. I did a quick character design sheet for the way they look, and pointy, angular features are usually indicative of an evil character, whereas rounded, you know, softer features are usually a more benevolent character. So yeah, kudos to you. Okay. Any questions so far? Yeah, sorry. To answer the question, I drew this character sheet of Siegfried and the Wicked Witch just earlier today, just so I had character design to start from. Yeah, that's exactly right. The question keeps popping up, so I don't know who's asked it, but an extreme close up shot, which would be my next shot, is show something very close up, like the eye of a character. That's a perfect example. And I think it was Casey. That's our motto in animation. At least that's what we start with. An object is defined by the way it moves, not the way it looks. So one of the earliest assignments you get in animation is to animate three balls. One, and they all look the exact same. One is to behave like a balloon. The other is to behave like a bowling ball, and the third is to behave like a bouncing ball. So regardless of its shape, and it's just an outline. So there's no rendering or depiction of light. It'll show you its behavior is what it defines it, not the way it looks. Okay, questions. Any questions so far? Um, for the combo or compo, um, this is actually a two-part class, but I guess you could get started. What I wanted to, or what I was thinking was either a four-panel or eight-panel scene that turns. And by turns, I mean a scene goes from one charge to another. So a scene could, in this case, with the Hansel and Gretel prequel, it could start as a good, or she's turned. You find out that she looks benevolent, and then she turns evil. I had a better reveal, but I'm not there yet. Um, Casey, I went to Sheridan College, so that's an animation school up here in Canada. Um, it's I didn't go to school with penguins or in an igloo, but it did get cold, so we worked mostly inside. No, Bunny. I don't mean physically turns. I mean that when something turns for the worst or turns for the best, meaning that you think one thing is either going well and then it turns badly, or it's something going badly that turns well. Yep, like a reveal. Every good scene turns. Yeah, there's a school up here for penguins. It's called, or university. It's called PU. There's one, two, three other shots, just in the type of shots. I'm gonna hammer them out just so you guys know what they are, and so let me do that. Okay. Sorry, I just tried to crunch those in as quick as I could. So starting from the down shot, a down shot is the camera is tilted down, making the subject matter appear diminutive or diminutive. Is that too many syllables? And it makes the viewer feel powerful or voyeuristic. There's a famous shot in the movie Psycho, and I'm talking about the original, not the Vince Vaughn remake, where Norman Bates is carrying his mom down the stairs, and it's a direct down shot, and you can't really see that he's carrying a corpse. Sorry for the big teaser, but it's been like 50 years, I guess, right? Or spoiler reveal. That's awesome. PK fixes everything in post. Um, I wish I could carry you in my pocket and just fix what I say after I say it. Like what Pete really meant to say was. Okay, next shot is the upshot, um, and that is the camera is tilted up, and that empowers the subject matter or makes the viewer feel small. So in this case, I sort of wanted to push us where Siegfried is, and sort of feel what he's feeling when he's looking up at the witch. And then finally, we have a Dutch tilt. I spelt it wrong. It's actually it's a Deutsch tilt or the German tilt. Um, and what it is, it's a sort of off kilter camera angle. So the camera's tilted on its side slightly, and it creates a feeling of uneasiness or tension, like something is falling over or that we're peering in for where we should not be looking for. So this is a quick way to create tension called a Dutch tilt. Oh, it goes further than that, Wendy. If you'll notice, you'll see that I put the witch on the left side, and Siegfried on the right side, right? And for the most part, that's good story planning, so that your characters don't call or don't flop axes, as you called. The camera can't go on the other side of them. It's an old stage paradigm, like when you're up on theater paradigm. But when the witch reveals her true nature to Siegfried, you'll notice that she flops to camera right, and Siegfried goes on to camera left. So the character's actually revealed herself for her true colors. So I flopped her. Yeah, sort of a change in force. In this case, it's revealing the true character's intentions, manifested through their flop in the screen. You'll notice when Smeagol and um, Gollum, who is essentially the same character, argue with each other, they start flopping axes depending on which stage of the argument they're in. Yep, you're totally right, Songfeather. Color becomes a another subliminal level of manipulation for storytelling with characters. I stayed away from that right now and just used the visual um, or my tools as a storyboard artist before color comes into play. Yeah, color totally works. It's a really difficult process. Jet Li's Hero is really good. If you like Asian movies or Eastern movies, there's a director by the name of Wong Kar Wai, whose use of color is top shelf. He's awesome. I think it was Songfeather. There's a book called "If It's Purple, Someone's Gonna Die: The Power of Color in Visual Storytelling" by Patty Bellatoni. Awesome book, super awesome. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, PK. The major thing I was missing here is just the types of camera movements. So the pans, the truck shots, the zoom shots, rotations, rack focus. Um, j- just that it isn't a storybook. Once you have something on film, you're able to move the camera, and those movements have different effect on how the audience sees things. And then finally, just the transition between shots, um, which are sort of covered in the storyboards. They have to be handled by the storyboard artist and thought about. Yeah, sure. The concept I was thinking is for the compo was to take a 4 or 8 panel. I guess you could go further than that, but simple is always best. A 4 or 8 panel and create a scene that turns. You know what? Let me add to create a scene that turns for the worst or turns for the better, just so we're clear. Oh, wait. I sound like Willy Wonka or I sound like a chocolate bar from Willy Wonka? Okay, great. I'm glad I sound okay. Um, with respects to the compo, technically you have the tools with these shots to create a scene that turns for the better or for worse. Camera transitions and camera movements um, just sort of add an additional layer to the shots themselves. Yeah, no, it's been my pleasure. It's a bit bizarre me talking to my iPad, but it's super cool. Thanks for coming. Do you have any other questions? Uh, Thanks, PK, or Pocket PK, for helping out with the transcribing. That's awesome. Uh, my dog's been totally looking at me like I'm mental.